You pick up your baby. You do what every human being does in that moment without thinking. You start to sing. Not a performance, not something rehearsed. Just the first soft, tuneless thing that surfaces. A half-remembered lullaby, a nursery rhyme, missing half its words, maybe just their name set to a melody you invented 30 seconds ago. And your baby looks at you. And then something happens to their face that stops you mid-note. The chin trembles, the eyes go glassy, and they cry. Not startled crying, not hunger. That slow building, completely sincere cry, as if your singing just reached inside them and found something they didn't know was there. Most parents do the same thing. They stop singing immediately. They feel vaguely humiliated. They decide they must be a terrible singer and file it under evidence. Maybe they never sing to that baby again. Maybe they tell the story at family dinners for years, a little self-deprecating joke. I guess she made her opinion clear, but developmental scientists have been studying this exact response, babies crying at singing, for over 3 decades. And what they found has nothing to do with your voice, your pitch, or anything that happened in middle school choir. What they found is about something operating deep inside your baby's emotional processing system. Something so precisely calibrated, so fundamentally human, that it reframes not just why your baby cried, but what it means that they can cry that way at all. The obvious explanation is overstimulation. You were quiet, then you made sound. The baby's nervous system flooded. They cried because you startled them, or because the volume was too much, or because infant hearing is simply too sensitive for close-range singing. This sounds completely reasonable. Pediatricians sometimes say it, grandparents definitely say it. You were too loud, you overwhelmed them, dial it back, and there is a logic to it. Newborn hearing is functional from around 24 weeks in utero, meaning your baby arrives in the world with roughly 4 months of acoustic experience already logged inside them, which is more time listening than most people spend on a single hobby in a year. They are not new to sound. Sound is, in a sense, the first world they ever lived in. And loud, sudden noise does trigger the Moro reflex, that full-body startle that looks exactly like freefall and will convince you, at least once, that you have done something irreversible. So, the overstimulation theory has its legs, until you look at the data. When researchers control for volume, playing babies' recordings of songs that precisely match decibel levels, the crying is selective. It does not happen with all voices. It does not happen with all singers. It is most reliably triggered by the one voice the baby knows better than any other voice on earth, the primary caregivers, the person they have been listening to since before they were born. Familiarity, by every reasonable expectation, should be calming. It is not. Your baby isn't crying because your singing is too loud. Your baby is crying because your singing is saying something their emotional system has just registered for the very first time. But here's where it gets deeper. Because to understand what singing is actually doing inside your baby's brain, you need to understand a field of research that has quietly rewritten what we thought we knew about how infants process the human voice. Researchers at the University of Toronto, led by psychologist Sandra Trehub, have spent decades mapping the specific way infant brains respond to sung versus spoken voice. Trehub's team used behavioral preference paradigms, a methodology that tracks how long infants orient toward a sound source, whether they show distress or engagement, and how their physiological arousal shifts, combined with detailed acoustic analysis to isolate exactly which properties of singing are doing the work. What they found is not what anyone expected. Infant-directed singing, the slower, higher-pitched, more rhythmically regular singing that caregivers produce spontaneously when they address a baby, is not processed the way speech is processed. It is not filtered through the language architecture, the meaning extraction systems, the comprehension circuitry. Babies root it somewhere else entirely. They process it the way they process emotion. The limbic system, the brain's deep emotional core, activates differently in response to a caregiver's singing voice than to almost any other acoustic input the baby receives. Think of your spoken voice as the information channel, data transfer, meaning, content, instruction. Your singing voice is a direct line into the emotional hardware. It bypasses the processing layer. It does not knock. It walks straight in. By as early as 2 months old, an age when a baby weighs roughly as much as a large bag of flour and has been outside the womb for approximately 8 weeks, infants already show measurable differential orienting to their primary caregiver's voice versus a stranger's voice in auditory tasks. The receiver is tuned that early, the wiring goes in fast, your baby isn't reacting to music. Your baby is reacting to you, your voice carrying more emotional weight than almost any other input their brain will ever receive. Now, I need to tell you about the part that stopped researchers cold. Because it turns out that crying at singing is not a malfunction of this system. It is the system working precisely as designed. And the reason why reveals something quietly astonishing about how human emotional development actually begins. A growing body of research, including work connected to McGill University's Center for Research on Brain, Language, and Music, has contributed to understanding what infant crying in response to emotionally laden sound actually represents at the neurological level. And findings published in the journal Cognition, examining emotional contagion in preverbal infants, turned the field's assumptions about distress sideways. Babies who cry when a caregiver sings are not, by the measurable markers researchers track, dysregulated. They are, by those same markers, more emotionally attuned. The crying is not a soothing failure. It is evidence of a working empathic response, a system receiving the signal it was built to receive and receiving it completely. Your baby is not overwhelmed by your singing. They are overwhelmed by what they feel inside it. Here's what that means in concrete terms. Adult humans carry years of accumulated emotional regulation. The learned ability to feel something substantial and not be entirely governed by it, to let a wave pass through without being knocked flat. Your baby has none of that infrastructure, not a single layer of it. When your singing voice carries warmth or tenderness or the particular quality of longing that lullabies have carried across every culture that has ever existed, your baby feels exactly what you are transmitting. They feel it with their entire body. They have no mechanism to modulate the incoming signal, no regulatory circuit to step between the transmission and the response. The prefrontal cortex, the brain's primary emotional regulation architecture, won't reach anything close to full maturity until the mid-20s, roughly a quarter century from the moment you are standing there singing. Your baby is receiving an adult-grade emotional broadcast through a system that was built to receive everything and filter nothing. Your baby isn't crying because they're upset. Your baby is crying because they feel exactly what you feel, and they feel it at full volume with nothing to turn it down. Now, I need to tell you about what this means for the relationship forming between you and your baby right now. Because there is research that reframes this completely, and once you understand what it shows, the crying will never feel like a rejection again. Work by developmental psychologist Colin Trevarthen at the University of Edinburgh introduced the concept of proto-conversation, the study of the turn-taking, call and response vocal exchanges that unfold between caregivers and infants in the earliest months of life. What Trevarthen documented is that these exchanges, including sung ones, are not one-way broadcasts. They are dialogues. Babies, as young as 4 months, time their vocalizations, their movements, and their facial expressions in response to the rhythmic and melodic structure of the caregiver's singing. They are not an audience sitting in the dark. They are participating. They are answering. Researchers have demonstrated this by coaching caregivers to sing with deliberately flattened emotional affect, same notes, same words, same tempo, same volume, but with the feeling drained out, delivered as if reading a list. The baby's engagement response changes, not because the melody shifted, not because anything acoustically measurable changed significantly, because the person changed, because the signal changed, because your baby is not listening to the song. They are listening to you, IMOB, to whether you mean it, and they know the difference with a reliability that should give you pause. This is not passive reception. This is the earliest form of a conversation human beings have with each other. One nervous system reaching toward another, checking whether the transmission is real, whether someone is genuinely there on the other end. Your baby isn't your audience. Your baby is your partner in the oldest, most fundamental emotional exchange our species performs. And now I need to say something important, because not all crying at singing is the same. And there is a specific pattern that developmental pediatricians describe as worth understanding. Not to alarm you, but because having a map is always better than navigating without one. The crying this video is about, that slow-building, emotionally saturated response when a caregiver sings with full presence, is healthy. It is, as the science shows, a signal that the emotional receiving system is online and working. But there is a different pattern worth knowing. A baby who shows no differential response to caregiver singing at all. Not crying, not stilling, not orienting with increased attention toward the familiar voice. A consistent absence of response where developmental research expects a response to be present. This is not a diagnosis. Response variation in early infancy is wide, and temperament accounts for a great deal of it. Some babies are constitutionally calmer. Some are simply in a state, well-fed, drowsy, already settled, where the singing finds no urgency to meet. The window researchers pay attention to runs from approximately 3 to 6 months. By 3 months, most typically developing infants show clear, consistent differential, orienting to their primary caregiver's voice over a stranger's. By 5 to 6 months, emotional responsiveness to caregiver vocalization, including distress responses to singing, should be reliably present across a range of contexts. If, by 6 months, a baby is showing consistent flatness in response to direct caregiver vocalization, not just singing, but talking, cooing, face-to-face engagement, that is a conversation worth having with a pediatrician. Not a reason to panic, a conversation. You've been watching this baby's face since the first hours of their life. You are, without question, the most finely calibrated instrument available for reading their responses. If something about the absence feels different to you, not quirky, not temperamental, but different, trust that. The brain's plasticity in the first year is a window unlike any other. What early attention can do, later attention cannot replicate. Because what all of this points toward, the crying, the emotional transmission, the system that receives everything and filters nothing, is something larger than a baby's response to a melody. When your baby cries at your singing, you are watching one of the earliest observable moments of genuine human empathy. Not empathy as adults practice it, conscious, chosen, managed from a careful distance. Empathy in its original form, one nervous system receiving the full signal of another with nothing between them. Before language, before self-concept, before any of the architecture we spend a lifetime constructing to keep other people's feelings at a workable distance. Your baby cannot protect themselves from what you feel, they receive it whole, and they respond with everything they have, which at this stage is all of them. Every time you sing to them, and they cry, you are present at the beginning of a capacity that will shape every meaningful relationship they ever have. The ability to be moved by another person, to let someone else's reality register inside your own. That is not a fragility. In developmental terms, that is the foundation of everything that comes after. And the fact that it starts with your voice, specifically yours, the one they learned inside a body before the world had a name for them, is not incidental. You are the first person whose feelings they ever learned to feel. So the next time you sing to your baby, and the chin wobbles, and the tears come, remember what is actually happening. Their limbic system is receiving your voice as a direct emotional transmission, uncompressed, unmediated, at full signal strength. They are not unhappy. They are full. They are feeling what you feel, inside a body that has no circuitry yet to hold that much. And they are crying the way anyone might cry, who was handed more than they knew what to do with. They are not telling you to stop. They are telling you they heard you. If your baby has cried when you sang to them, I want to know. Tell me what you were singing. Tell me how old they were. Tell me whether you stopped or whether you kept going. Because I think the answers are going to be more similar than any of us expect. And if you want to understand why your baby reaches for your face when they're frightened, not for your arms, not for your body, specifically for your face, not because they want comfort in the way you understand comfort, not because it's habit, but because of something the brain does in moments of fear that almost no one outside developmental neuroscience has ever heard of. That is the next video. And once you understand what's actually happening, the way your baby looks at you when they're scared will mean something completely different than it did before.